Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. It's match day or match night in the Champions League. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm delighted to be joined by Chris McCowan. I'm pretty sure the pair of us would much rather be at Celtic Park this evening. But we're here. We're here to talk about Celtic versus Slovan Bratislava. And there has been something of an air of positivity around the bulletins that we've been doing on a daily basis, Chris. I've seen a lot of similar views and outlooks on this game on the socials. How are you feeling about tonight?
Quietly confident. Quietly confident, I would say. I share a lot of the optimism, and I've been following the shows for the past couple of weeks. And I completely share the optimism. I mean, I think it's been one of these situations where we've had the draw, and the amount of people have said to me, if we pick the teams in the group, those are the ones we've picked. So you're thinking, okay, great, that's good. We've got a 100% record in the league. We started the season really, really well. We're scoring loads of goals. I think we've only conceded one all season. So we're in real good form. Our rivals across the water are not doing so great. For various reasons. It's almost like the good news just keeps coming, and we're back in the Champions League. This new format, which I think is going to give us, the best chance we've had in a long time to really progress and potentially qualify. So, there's only reasons for me to be positive. That doesn't mean I'm not nervous. I mean, I've got the jitters. I'm nervous. I'm feeling a bit like, is this where it all comes crashing down? But look, we've got a record signing in the lineup tonight, which I know you want to talk about. We've got guys who are bang on form at the moment. We've got the old reliables there. We've got a goalkeeper who potentially is, easily as good as, if not maybe even a wee bit better in terms of how he plays in the team from the great Joe Hart. So, I just think there's so many reasons to be positive. Once that music starts playing and the lights are on at Parkhead, and like you, I'd love to be at the stadium tonight. Really jealous of Acsom and all the folks that are there tonight. But I hope everyone has a cracking one at the stadium. But when that music comes on the TV and the players comes out, just the feeling again. It's this happening once a year is not enough.
Well, this is it. This is the playground in which we want to play our football, Chris. And I've got to welcome you back. You've had a wee break from Acsom recently. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you back. I noticed that you're wearing a wee bit of the old Kevin McDermott merchandise. Kevin, of course, was one of our earlier guests on This Is Acsom. We're going to be bringing up the team just shortly. I'm sure you've all seen it, but it has been the point of deliberation all week. Who's going to drop out really in the midfield? We now know, as you were saying there, that Engels has maintained his starting position alongside Callum McGregor and Rio Atati. We're going to run through the entire side. And you know what? It's one of these ones where yesterday I felt that Brendan Rodgers spoke very well, as he does, but he spoke in a way that I've got to agree with his assertion, Chris, that we're coming into this set of games, this campaign in Europe, in better shape than we have done previously. Now, this is a strange thing in many ways, because the vast majority of the start 11 were playing in a side that didn't have the same verve up until a certain point last season. And I think that, you then throw into the mix, we lost our star player, Matt O'Reilly. We lost Joe Hart, and you think, wow, two massive losses to a side that Brendan Rodgers was, galvanising, I think, last season. But like you said before, he's replaced Joe Hart with someone who has, for me, made an impact in half a dozen games. Tonight will be his sixth game, and you're looking at him thinking he might even be an upgrade. And the biggest part of that upgrade, as well as the saves that he does have to make, because it's not like he's not made a save. He's made, it might just be that they're not coming at a point where it's nothing each, and you're thinking that's changed the game yet. But it's a distribution as well. And we were talking about this earlier on with John and Patrick. He's very quick with the ball at his feet. He can pick out a pass first time. The passing range and the throwing range, a la his old fella, who was one of the best. I mean, he was one of the goalies that was able to throw the ball over the halfway line onto his winger and start an attack really quickly and get the team on the back foot. Kasper Schmeichel's been doing all of that. I mean, he was doing it really well against Hearts. Probably our worst performance of the season, it's got to be said. But I think what we want to see is we want to see players like that on this stage. How can he make a difference in the Champions League? Because last season, Joe Hart, again, I thought he was solid. He was one of the players on my list that I was confident with going into the games last season of Champions League. I just think we've got an added extra bit of quality with Kasper Schmeichel.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I know a lot of people viewed the move as a bit short-termist, a bit of a, he's can write out of Brendan's phone book because of the partnership at Leicester. But you've got to remember, Schmeichel is a Premier League winner. He is, you talk about his family legacy. He's obviously followed his father's footsteps, and his father was, for me, probably the best goalkeeper throughout the 90s in that very dominant period where Man United were winning everything. But he's became a tremendous top player in his own right. Maybe should have gone to play at a bigger club. Stuck with Leicester for a long time. Maybe could be a player would have went on to a bigger club and actually got more Champions League level experience. But since he's come into the club, what he's brought for me to that back line is assurance. There doesn't seem to be quite as many of the old bomb scare moments that you used to get when balls used to go back to Joe Hart or passing across the face of a goal. He brings an air of confidence and an air of assurance. Looks very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. Quite quick distribution, but he's also very accurate with his distribution as well, which I like. And I think the one thing that we don't necessarily always acknowledge, we view the fact that he's got this relationship with Brendan Rodgers as a bit of a negative. It was like it was a lazy appointment, it was a lazy signing, there was no scouting involved. There might be some truth in that. But the one big advantage to that is Brendan Rodgers knows how to get the best from the player. The player understands the expectations of the manager and the way the manager likes to play. The relationship there has, fosters a very positive element in terms of his signing and what he brings to the team. So I cannot think off the top of my head of a goalkeeper that realistically would have been out of reach that I would rather have in goals than Kasper Schmeichel right now.
This is a big thing because you could probably go back to the summer and list them. Every day there was a new target, and there was probably, I think at one point Paddy Sinnott wrote an article, and there was 10 goalkeepers we had been linked with during the transfer window. It would be interesting at some point to look through the list of goalkeepers at the end of the season and see how they've all done, and then go back to your point there, Chris, because at this moment in time, I totally agree with you. We are going to bring the team up very, very soon, and we'll have a run through that, and then we'll get on to your comments. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved, as always. This is a Celtic state of mind before the match, and we've been covering every single match over the last 4.5 seasons. There's a few comments in there. Why are we not at the game? I'll tell you something. I would love to be. I've still got my season ticket. Obviously, the Champions League package has been purchased. The situation we've got at the moment, and we've been trying to discuss this with the club previously, is no one can broadcast from the stadium other than the broadcasters who have got the contractual rights. So even if we were able to somehow access a broom cupboard at Celtic Park where we could do this and then nip out to our seats and come back, they wouldn't allow us to do it. We even spoke to them a few years ago about, up in the executive lounges and all the rest of it, where you could find a quiet. No, there's no chance of doing that. So my second kind of option was to get a camper van and pimp it up, like Pimp My Ride, and then we can do it from there and then jump into the right. And then there's maybe a venue nearby. So yes, we're in discussions with a few different things. We certainly do want to be doing this, nipping away maybe whoever's going to the game 5 minutes before the game kicks off, and leaving someone like Kevin McCluskey in Hungary maybe to run the match day until such times as you come back. So yes, we are looking into that. It would be far better if we could do it from the game. I can just imagine us with a Bovril on one hand, a mic in the other, big furry Tammy and all that kind of stuff. Yes,
absolutely, yeah.
I'd be all over it. Right, let's bring in some of the comments. Marquee, youth team beating Bratislava 4-0. Let's not forget the B team did indeed get a really resounding victory at the Lesserhandon City Park in Glasgow earlier on today. Well done to those guys. Jungle Lion, we have to get a box at Celtic Park. Yeah, we are looking at all options at Jungle Lion, and one of these days we will be able to do what we're doing, but from either in the stadium or somewhere nearby. I like the camper van idea though. Davy Boy Macaulay, good to see you back. You're on the YouTube. Hail, hail, comrades. I've got a good feeling about tonight. Then I've a horrible feeling, then it's great again. That up and down, topsy-turvy moods and set of emotions. I think John Hughes went through that earlier on today on the bulletin. Let's have a look at the team then. And it's Celtic's side. Obviously, there he is, the man, Callum McGregor. And the aforementioned Schmeichel starts in goals. He's a certain starter with Alistair Johnston at right back and Greg Taylor at left back. The centre-half partnership, which is the best that we have at the moment, is Carter Vickers and Scales, and they're there on merit. The big talking point, of course, was the midfield, and Brendan Rodgers has opted for Callum McGregor and Big Arnie. I was going to call him Ange. God almighty, get him out of my mind. Arnie Engels and Rio Atati. And up top, it's Kuhn, Maeda and Kyogo. Now, when you look at the bench, it is strong. It's Sinisalo, Trusty, who we've not seen yet in hoops, Palma, Ida, Valle, another one who hasn't made his debut, Yang, McCowan, Novroski, Bernardo, Forrest, Ralston and Welsh. And the big discussion was around that midfield. We were speaking today about this, Chris, and there was a suggestion by the big man, Yogi, whose father was one of the goal scorers against Slovan Bratislava, 63-64 season, where we went all the way to the semi-finals of the Cup Winners' Cup. And he suggested that, it might make sense to be playing the types of Engels-Hattati partnership at home. And then when we go away from home, that's maybe when Bernardo is going to be deployed. Would you subscribe to that?
I would. And I think even just taking this game into account, I think we should try and start on the front foot. But I do think at some point in this game, and actually and not just the away games, but the home games going forward, I think we're going to need an element of game management. And I think that's where players like Bernardo and possibly McCowan come into play. A bit of great at harrying and harassing players, good movement, good awareness of reading the ball. It was how we kind of deployed Bernardo last season. Although I don't think we ever really found the balance. Whereas this season, he's certainly showing a lot of promise in terms of the possession. So Bernardo dropping out to the bench in this game, I wouldn't see as being a negative either on the player or for the team. I think we go with our more attack-minded players. We try and start fast, which we've been doing all season. We've started most games with that high-intensity play, and then we've got the option of saying, okay, now we're maybe going under pressure a wee bit, which is going to happen, right? Especially probably in the second half. So you've got the option of bringing in guys who are maybe a bit more designed and tailored to actually hold the ball up, slow the game down, break the play up, that little thing, and help us get a result over the line. Because ultimately, look, we'd love a 4-5-6-0 victory, but this could be a game of really tight margins in terms of scoreline. And for me, it's most important that we get the win and get the 3 points, even if we have to do it ugly at times. I think it's really important that we get the win. So I think this is the first time where I've actually looked at a Celtic team in Europe, and I've looked beyond the first 11, and I've looked actually at the quality on the bench. And there were 3 or 4 positions you mentioned there. Okay, a couple of guys we've not seen, Trusty, Valle, for example. But those are guys who are coming in to cover positions that we had real concerns about. Now, obviously, they have to come in and show what they can do, and I've not seen them. I had a chance to see them do that. But the fact is that we do have options coming off the bench, and I think that's really, really important going into Europe. It was one of the things we were so worried about all the way through the transfer window, that we weren't going to get these positions filled. Now, getting filled is one thing. You want to fill them with quality. So we really, we've got hopefully a bit of trust that will come in, and trust and Trusty that will come in and do the job. But it is nice to see that. It's nice to see that squad depth and a bit of quality on the bench.
Listen, we've got £10.5 million worth of centre halves on the bench, right? Novroski and Trusty, if you want to look at it like that. Because we're coming into these games and we talk about how we perform in every transfer window, and we scrutinise every single move, and we go in, and I've always got my list of guys that I think we should leave, move from the building, and most of them did leave, to be fair, but there was a few that stayed behind, and Novroski was one of them. I think it was a numbers game really with him to keep the cover, but there's a lot of players who have flown the nest, but one who came in and he's on the bench, and you look at what's happened since he walked down the tunnel as a Celtic fan in a Celtic jersey, Luke McCowan, and then he gets thrown into the Rangers game to make his debut. The following game against Hearts, he scores his first goal for Celtic, and tonight he might even make a Champions League appearance. What an incredible turnaround for a player who not that long ago, really, in the terms of a football career, was playing Championship football for Ayr United, Chris. It's been sensational. And you know this, I was one of the guys that was sitting here and, you know, it's out there and I'm not going to deny it, saying he'd be a good signing for Aberdeen, but he shouldn't be coming to Celtic because we should be looking at this calibre of player, a player that you're going at the Champions League thinking, right, he can handle this platform. But Brendan Rodgers has done this completely, you know, differently. He signed a player at 26 years of age for £1 million. People call it a no-brainer and all the rest of it. But he's not here to see the sights. He's not here to get the tracksuits and just travel to the away games, you know, as a Celtic fan. He's here to actually make his mark. I would love to see him making his debut in the Champions League tonight.
Yeah, me too. And I think he's done everything he possibly can to earn it, right? He's made the most of every appearance he's had so far. Listen, I fell into that trap, and something that I've actually criticised, you know, ourselves and our fellow supporters for doing is that we look down on Scottish players and players within our own league sometimes. We don't necessarily mean to do it, but we do it kind of subconsciously. They don't have the degree of fashionability that say an overseas signing sometimes has, and that's like, you know, we're human, we'll do that. But nothing's put a bigger smile on my face than watching Luke McCowan walk down that tunnel. Something that most of us have probably dreamed of doing, you know, and I've done it on the tour and it was great. So I can't imagine what it'd be like doing that. You know, especially tonight with the atmosphere in the Champions League in front of the lights. So listen, I wish nothing but the best to the young fella. Young fella, 26, that shows my age. But at the same time, since he's came in, his attitudes, the way he's spoken, what he said and how it's resonated with the fan base. You know, if you were checking a box before signing for Celtic saying these are all the things you want to do to get on side with the fans, he's doing it. But you know the best thing? He's also doing it on the pitch. You know, he's coming on, doesn't look at a place, doesn't look overawed with it. He's not a guy who's just won a lottery ticket. This is a guy that's here to make an impact, and he'll never have a better stage and a better opportunity to do it. So, yeah, I would love to see McCowan come in today. You know, hopefully when the game's going well and he's got freedom to go and maybe showcase what he can do a little bit. He's not a player that's given me any indication that he'll shrink under the weight of the shirt. I think he's puffing his chest out and he's saying, okay, not many people, you know, probably quite accurately, not many people thought I was going to be good enough to come and play here. Well, I'm going to go and show you what I can do, and you know, good on him. And if he, you know, I'll be delighted if he makes me eat those words. I'm already eating to an extent, but I'll be delighted if he makes me eat those words back in the day back in the pre-season when I said not sure he's the kind of player we should be looking at. So,
you know what's interesting about it, right? Is there has been occasions in the past. Let's be honest. What did we know about Jota when he came to Celtic? We didn't know much about Jota, right? And he turned out to be an absolute superstar. But you know, there's a kind of approach at times, and I'm guilty of it, whereby you think the exotic name, he's coming from the Benfica Academy, so he must be a decent player. Whereas here's this guy, he's played for unfashionable clubs in Scotland, he's 26-year-old. So he can't be as good, you know, and it's absolute nonsense. But I'm going to go back to a discussion I had last week with Scott Coyne. I've mentioned it a couple of times, Chris. He came on as a Belgian football correspondent to talk not only about...
It's interesting, yeah.
It was good. He was very good. The Club Brugge, upcoming Club Brugge game, but also Arnie Engels and his process and his kind of graduation through the system at Bruges. He's moved to the Bundesliga, etc. And you know what he spoke about, what he brought to mind, which is interesting because we've not really focused on it that much when we're talking about recruitment, data-driven recruitment, is that mentality, the personality, and how a player fits in the dressing room, and that old thing, attitude. Now we've all, you know, had workplaces where there's certain people that drag others down. You know, they've got this attitude where it's a can't do approach, if you know what I mean, Chris. And often times, you know, that's something that can't be gauged on a data system. And that's whereby you've got to look at the whites of the player's eyes, you've got to suss them out, you've actually got to speak to them. And I think that Brendan places a huge onus on that, doesn't he? The actual personality of the individual, and so did Ange.
I think so. I think he likes to source his own players to an extent and bring them in and work with guys that he thinks he can get a tune out of. And you're hoping that's going to be the case with Engels, because it's a very big outlay for us. And that puts an awful lot of pressure on a young guy. He looks as though he's handling it magnificently. I mean, look at how he took that penalty. That was that was coolness personified. But yeah, I think this is where I think it was important to see what Brendan did in his second season here, because we made a lot of allowances in our criticism of Brendan last year. We said, there's a raft of new players coming in, not necessarily players that he's picked. We don't necessarily believe he's getting the support from the recruitment team. We made some assumptions about that as well. But I think second season, he's coming into it with the perception of the fans that he's in control. He's signing off on the players, he's getting the guys in that he wants, he's now working with a group of players that this is now a Brendan team. And that brings with it the pressure and the scrutiny. But look at the start of the season. The team is gelling. We're playing some really good football at times. Not all the time, we're still a little bit rusty and a bit raw at the time, especially in the second half of games. But we're playing some magnificent football. We've got a 100% record. I think we scored something like 17 goals and conceded 1. I think that's roughly where we're at. I mean, we look ultra dominant domestically, and we're coming into this first European game, something that we all had anxieties about. And actually, we're saying we'll never have a better chance. We'll never have a better chance to go and show what we can do. So I think the manager's earned a bit of trust at this point. It might all change by the 90th minute tonight. We might be like, we really weren't as equipped as we were. But as I said, I'm quietly confident that when you've got such a comfortable looking team at the moment, if they go in and play their game and do their job and play without fear, I think we could go and get a real good result tonight and make a few people stand up and take notice.
I think, what we've been talking about is trying to have aspirations in Europe. You come up against Slovan Bratislava, you show them all the respect in the world. It's going to be difficult to actually gauge the level. We know that they're the champions of their country. We know that they're here absolutely on merit, having played 8 games, 4 rounds to get here.
Yeah.
And you're looking through the team, which I'm actually going to read out just now. Tekac, Wimmer, Bajeric, Kasia, Blackman, Ignatenko, Kuka, Weiss. You'll remember Vladimir Weiss from his time at Man City and Rangers.
Played for that old team that doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yes, he did. Čolik, Barzegan, and Strelelic. Now, Weiss's dad is also the manager. He's also the manager of the team. And I've said a few things about him over the piece. He was a former teammate of Lubomir Moravcik for the Czechoslovakian international team. He was also the manager of Artmedia Bratislava when they pumped us 5-0.
Famous night, Strachan's first game, wasn't it?
Yes, under Gordon Strachan. And I think that, to be fair, you show them respect, but you get a bit of revenge for that one as well, would be nice. And again, going back to the 63-64 campaign in the Cup Winners' Cup, the one and only, the late Joseph Venglos was actually a player for Slovan Bratislava back then. Never played against Celtic. He was dropped for the games. Let's bring you in on the conversation. 3-0 a tick. Joe, I love your positivity this evening. I would love to see that, because I think there's a momentum there. We were looking at some of the results earlier on, Chris, the thumping that Bayern Munich levied out, for example. That's a horror show. Going into the first game, Dynamo Zagreb, one of our opponents, going into the first game and getting leathered 9-2, it's going to suck the appetite, and it's going to suck the confidence out of a lot of the players. And young boys weren't that impressive against Villa, although I get it, Villa are a decent side, a very good standard. So, yeah, to start the campaign, Joe, with a win of any description would be brilliant. If it was as resounding as 3-0, I certainly would be delighted. There is no haircut going on. I went for a run, Ross, so this is the natural look, mate. Absolutely just dishevelled and sitting wherever it lands. Paul O'Brien, Bernardo, unlucky not to be starting tonight. This is a big talking point. Maybe the finishing 11 have as much impact as the starting 11 and a good win to start the campaign.
Great point.
Something that Brendan's always spoken about, the starting and the finishing 11 being equally as important. But I do like the idea of the Hatate, the style of play that Hatate provides you at home. I'm not saying you have the luxury of having someone like Hatate in the team, because I'm not, it's not as though he's a passenger when it comes to defensive play. But I could understand the thinking behind playing him at home and Bernardo for some of the away games. I mean, Bernardo was being played in the big Champions League games last season when he was on loan.
Yeah, absolutely, and did well to an extent. Especially just coming into the club, new country, etc. No, I agree with your point on Hatate. I think Hatate is a player who can delight and frustrate in equal measure. But he tries things that other players won't, and I think that's going to be really important in the Champions League. We're not going to get results in the Champions League by purely playing it safe. Yeah, we need good game management. We'll be under pressure. We need big players to step up and do their jobs and be disciplined and not crumble under pressure. Hatate's the kind of player that you look to unlock a defence, to just pull out that pass that nobody thinks is on, and potentially make it work. And especially when you've got a player like Kyogo with his movement, you need someone that's just got the innovation and the invention to say, I'm going to try that. And you know what? 7 times out of 10 it's not going to come off, but 3 times out of 10 it is, and you could potentially get 3 goals out of that. So for me, yes, I think at home you want to be on the front foot. With the greatest respect to Bratislava, it's a team that I think a lot of people say we feel that we can go and get a result against, as opposed to some of the big hitters that you've mentioned. I want us to go on the front foot and play confident and play without fear a little bit. I think Hatate embodies that. He's just a player who will always come off, and you'll be like, oh, for God's sakes, we've lost possession again. But when it comes off, it's brilliant, and more often than not, it results in something really, really positive, whether it be a goal or a good chance or a penalty or a set piece. You need a guy who will bring that to the table. And don't get me wrong, Bernardo, I think, will come on, and I think he'll play an equally meaningful role. It is now very much about utilising the squad, utilising the different options we have, and you're trusting that the manager is going to assess the situation and say, do you know what, maybe we go 2-0 up or something in this game, and we start to feel under a wee bit of pressure. The other team starts to chase it. You think, all right, I'm going to change it a wee bit here. I'm going to shore it up, and that's where a player like Bernardo comes in. So having that option for the manager is great. You just hope you get the benefits from starting that, what I call the riskier player with Hatate.
He's a risk taker, absolutely. Yeah. But he's a playmaker, a game changer. All of these cliches rolled into one. That's Rio Hatate. And if you look at his stats, maybe he loses the ball more than the rest of the midfield players do. But he's a type of guy who will get you the assist through the eye of the needle and all that stuff. That's why he's in the team. I'm in for chipping in for a box, says Ian Roy. I like it. I like that idea.
That's recorded, right? That's recorded. We've got that.
It is. That's why I brought it up. It's for evidential value. CFC 1888. JP, no team is easy. We have seen it all before. Listen, you're right. I was asked the question earlier today about whether or not this would be Celtic's easiest, and I would never use that word in the Champions League, or most comfortable game. They might be thinking we're their most comfortable game when you look at the fixtures that they have after this game. So I would never take that for granted. 2-0, says John Mullane. And Engels will stroll it. I think he did really well, Joe, when he came into the side against Hearts. And I'm really excited with this player. I think what we've seen from his progression, and that was explained to us by Scott Coyne, is that he has got plenty of senior games. We say senior games because he was playing within the Belgian pyramid, Chris, for the reserve team, club next. And then that got him his move. He was 200 grand to go to the Bundesliga. So they did not a bad bit of business, Augsburg, did they? Selling him for a deal that's actually a living rising to 13 million quid. Thomas, look at this for positivity. I think 4-0 is a good shout. My son laughed at my prediction. I think I've had a few shandies. Well, you enjoy your shandies. AGSC, strong Celtic bench. Even Ralston and Welsh have years of European experience now. And, as well as having that experience, I just think they're great guys to be in the squad. You imagine being the likes of Engels, right, who's dreamed of playing at Champions League. He's come to Celtic. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. A bit like Luke McCowan. He'll probably come into this category. And you've got guys like James Forrest, Stephen Welsh, Tony Ralston on the bench. But they're there for another purpose, Chris, because they can calm players down and really, get them into that zone that you need to be in to play at the absolute elite level.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, yeah, absolutely. You need experienced heads, and experience is not just all about age. It's about what you've done in your career to that point. I mean, Stephen Welsh is still a young man, but actually, you look at what he's been exposed to as a Celtic player and what he's taken part in and what he's contributed to. So he's got value to bring, even if he doesn't do it on the park tonight. It'll be about setting the expectations, reinforcing the message from the manager and the captain. And making sure that whether they be the guys who are starting on the pitch or the guys who are coming off the bench, what this means to the fellow Celtic players, but most importantly to the fans, right? The fans are the ones that really set the expectations. We know what we want to see from our players, and that's why I think McCowan's doing all the right things at the moment. Because he's a guy that we just know appreciates being at the club and having this opportunity, and is going to go and make the most of it. So he's one of the guys I think actually probably won't need too much hand holding through this. I reckon he's like, this is it. This is what I became a footballer for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. But yeah, absolutely, it's a squad game. Everybody's got a value and a part to play tonight, and I hope we're on it tonight. Really am.
Well, I can see by the dwindling numbers on the live stream that the game has kicked off. So go away, enjoy the game, enjoy the first half, and come back for a wee chat at half time. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to Chris McCowan for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Hoops.